what I'm saying? Just as long as you're going to give them money, you have to check.
Okay.
And even there, somebody could think, well, I don't want to go through this whole training thing if you're going to get done and you're not going to have work authorization. And you can't, that's what's illegal.
Right.
And you know, with E-Verify, when you see it, it could be very tempting to just check in this computer system and nobody would know. You know, if you had enough information, you could probably do it. But you can't do it because it's against the law.
Right.
So, did you ever?
Are you saying it takes about 6 months to find out if they're worth all?
No, 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 no. No, I'm saying if I was using like a hypothetical, if they had some kind of work authorization, but say it was going to expire, like let's say people who graduate from college, they get foreign nationals, they get a period of optional practical training, like a 1-year period after they graduate to work full-time. So if that's going to expire, for example, in 6 months, you don't want to have that person come and then in 6 months they have nothing. You know, so that, and that's how you could think. That's a logical way for an employer to think, but you can't go ahead and check that out. Okay. All right, and then the employer, this goes to the discrimination aspect. The employer can't request specific documents. They have to take what the employee gives them as long as it fits within the rules of the I-9. And they also, they can't pick them for somebody. So if somebody comes in with a big file of immigration documents, you can't, you know, and just plops it in front of you, you can't say, well, I'll take this and I'll take that. You can help them. You can say, well, that's a green card. That would work for List A. But you can't do it for them. Okay. Oh, I'm way behind. Okay, so this is the I-9, and I'm hoping you've all seen it. You know, it's the front and the back. The back has the list of documents. And if you look at it, if you look at that list on the back, List A are, well, let me start with B. List B are identity documents. So that shows, like a driver's license is an identity document. It shows that the person is who they say they are. And then List C is the employment authorization document, whatever it is that gives a person the right to work in the United States. And List A are documents that serve both those purposes. Like a green card has a picture, so it's for ID and it's for work authorization. Okay, now again, this E-Verify does not replace this. Employers are still going to have to fill out the piece of paper. And there's no talk of it replacing at any point in the foreseeable future. Okay, so I'm going to show you each section. All right, this is section 1. And this is what the employee has to fill out. They have to do it on the first day of hire, or the first day that they start. And the employer has to just look and make sure that it's complete. Because if it's not complete, there are actually fines for not being complete. So if you leave out a maiden name, for example, there are fines for that. Whether you're actually going to get fined is a question, you know, who knows, but it is a possibility. Now, it has Social Security number there. And up until now, you couldn't require a Social Security number. But if you're an E-Verify employer, you have to require a Social Security number because, and I'll show you the system, but E-Verify is not going to work without Social Security. And that's a major difference. Okay, then there's this section 2. And this is where you record what they gave you. Whether they gave you a List A or a List B and C, you record it. Now, what's right here, there's this certification section, and most employers fill that out, sign it, and date it, and they never even read it. And that's where it says that the person signing says that the document appears to be genuine and relate to the employee named, and that the person is work authorized. And that's why E-Verify exists, because employers were signing this, but they didn't know. They didn't know for sure if these documents were okay or not. So the concept was that they could put this into a computer system and the government would come back and tell you if this document was genuine or not. So that's where the thinking comes from. Because I know employers, because I speak to employers regularly, they think of this whole thing as an enormous pain in the neck. But there is a concept behind it to help. It is really meant to help employers. And there's not enough, it hasn't been around and been used enough to know if it does, so we're kind of in an experimenting stage with E-Verify. All right, this has to be done within 3 days of hire, and the employer has to also E-Verify in 3 days of hire. So the concept is that they work simultaneously. So you have the paper I-9, and then hopefully you do the E-Verify either at exactly the same time or shortly thereafter.
So can I ask what the standards are? Right now, when this I-9 is completed, it's kept at the employer.
Yes,
with the employer. The government never sees it.
Right.
It's just in case of an audit. correct?
exactly. That's it.
Now, the E-Verify, right now, as this program is being put into place, is just for large companies at this point in time? What's the process?
No, it's anybody who wants to sign up for it.
Oh, any employer?
Any employer. And right now, with an exception that I'm going to get to, it's voluntary.
Voluntary.
Except for, and there are some, they're trying to make it mandatory, so, and I'll tell you about how they're making it. They're getting closer and closer to that, but there's only one state where it's mandatory right now, and Arizona. But otherwise, it's voluntary, and they're not getting a lot of volunteers. So, you know, and employers are very concerned about it, and part of the reason is, what you're sort of getting at is that it's always just been this piece of paper, and now there's going to be this electronic record. So they're kind of opening themselves up to something that the government didn't used to see unless they did an audit. And there are some questions about how accurate it is, and I'll get to that. Okay. And then there's this section 3, the updating and re-verification section. And what that is that these work authorization documents, like an EAD, for an example, has or an H-1B visa, they have expiration dates. So what the employer is supposed to do is make sure on that, before that, or on that expiration date, that they have a new work authorization. They either renewed their EAD or they got another H-1B, whatever it is, that they're now okay to work. So that's the concept here. But this can't be done in E-Verify, so that's a major difference. E-Verify is only for the initial time that the person is employed, and that's it. There's no re-verifying in E-Verify, at least not at this point. Okay, so let's talk about the system, how this works. Like I said, it was mandated by the 1996 law, but it took them many, many years to get it going. And it's a partnership between DHS and CIS, Department of Homeland Security, Immigration. And the reason is that Social Security has huge amounts of documents on U.S. citizens and everybody else who's ever gotten a Social Security number. And DHS, or Homeland Security, has lots and lots of records on immigrants. So in concept, what happens is you input the information, and behind the scenes, the computer is making queries of those millions of records that those agencies have, and hopefully it's going to come up with a match. Okay? So that's, again, the idea is it's going to back up what the employer is looking at. It's going to say, oh yeah, that green card is good, that's in our system. Okay.
Will that identify false Social Security numbers, because they're pretty easy to get, so?
Yep. Oh yeah, well, unless, there's certain things it's not going to do. Like, I think most people know that it's not unheard of for illegal aliens to go and purchase a Social Security card of a dead person.
Right.
So if they have a dead person's Social Security card and the death hasn't been reported to Social Security, it's going to go through. So there are flaws in the system, but that's the least of the flaws.
Right, right.
There are flaws in these databases, which is why there's been lawsuits, which I'll get to, and employer organizations that are really against it because the databases are not perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, would it identify if it's like the numbers are being used twice, like if two people are using the same green card numbers and stuff?
How would that happen? Like, you mean if somebody?
Like sometimes people like maybe like one cousin is using this name and then like.
Oh, and then he goes and uses the same thing? I'm going to show you that. There is a way. I'll get to that. Because green cards have a picture, so that's going to get caught.